In this video, I'm going to show one way of using the ivy brush. The ivy brush is really nice for just painting ivy on, say, walls or objects so it looks overgrown. But I want to have ivy on, say, a flat plane so I can add it to a wall or remove it or animate it separately than from the, say, the wall that it's on. So it's how to put it on an image plane with no background. So first I'm going to turn off my filter and then search for ivy, and I have the ivy branch. I also need to turn on opacity in my scene. So the shader setting on the top right of Painter, I'm going to click on it, and by default this will say ASM Metal Rough. Click on it, and on the left hand side, 3 rows down, it will say PBR Metal Rough with alpha blending. The alpha blending means it will have opacity turned on. Then under the texture set settings, right next to the layers tab, I'm going to scroll down to channels, click on the plus sign, and turn on opacity. And then I'll actually have the option of opacity on my layers. And if I paint with the brush by default, it is going to do the exact opposite of what I want. It is going to hide the ivy and keep the background. So I'm going to undo that. And on this layer, I'm going to turn off opacity. So the actual ivy layer, let me name it ivy, will not have any opacity, and I will have my ivy. I'm going to make a fill layer. I'm going to call it ivy opacity. And I'm going to turn off every channel except for opacity. So the only thing there will be the OP. And then on the opacity option, I can just make the entire thing invisible, which is not what I want. I want something called an anchor point. And an anchor point will allow my fill layer to reference a channel on a different layer and use it. So back on my ivy layer, I'm going to right click on it, and at the very bottom, it has add anchor point. That's all you have to do on the ivy layer. On the ivy opacity, where it says opacity, click on it, and I have a tab for anchor points. And the only one in my scene is called ivy, so I'm going to click on it. The default channels will not work. I actually don't want to reference the opacity channel. I'm going to change that to base color. And then alpha behavior, I have keep alpha or extract alpha. I want to extract it. I will have a little white outline around it. And down here I have a levels. And the middle slider, the grays on the top, I'm going to click on it and drag it to the right. And that will get rid of the little white outline. So bring it to the left, it becomes more intense. Bring it to the right, it becomes much cleaner. I can then go back to my original ivy layer, and I can add more ivy as I want, and it will update with the anchor point. So it's a nice way if you want to have some ivy hanging down from a building. You would just have your flat plane and draw your ivy on it, and then you can move it around, but it wouldn't actually be part of the original texture. And you'd be able to put some really simple animations on it if you wanted it flowing back and forth, or have ivy hanging down so a player could walk through it going through a cave. Lots of different options for it, and not the most intuitive way to set it up.